Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another FP&A Trends Webinar. Today we have a very international professional audience. We have participants from 54 countries and 5 continents. Thank you so much for joining us. I would like to remind you that FP&A Trends webinars were designed for our global finance professional community with the goal to share the latest and global trends and developments in modern financial planning and analysis. We are really excited about today's subject. The subject is the power of driver-based and predictive FP&A. My name is Larissa Malnichuk. I'm CEO and founder of FP&A Trends Group and International FP&A Board. Let me very quickly introduce you to our fantastic and very strong speaker panel today. Let me introduce to you our practitioner speaker, Alex Beard, who is Global FP&A Director at Guardian Industries. Alex has over 26 years experience with this company, with Guardian, with prominent and very senior roles in both accounting, business development, financial reporting, and financial planning. During his time with Guardian, he introduced a driver-based planning model, but also I would like to add that Alex has a very international exposure. So he worked both in Europe and the US, and for the last 3 years, he is leading a global financial planning and analysis group of the company in Guardian Glass headquarters in Michigan. Alex, welcome to the webinar.
Thank you, Larissa. Happy to be here.
Then we have our second speaker for today. This is Scott Stan, who is Director of Finance Solutions at OneStream Software. Scott has a very strong background in practical finance. He was leading FP&A and finance teams in organizations such as MetLife, Catalina Marketing, Masonite International. Also, he had very senior executive operational role at HIG Capital Portfolio Business. And most recently, Scott was responsible for the company, which is leading company at the predictive analytics software space. The company is called Alliances. The company is called Prevedera. Scott, you are welcome to the webinar.
Thank you so much. Very happy to be here.
A little bit about my background. So I'm a former practitioner, qualified British accountant, CIMA accountant. I was leading FP&A teams in Europe and globally for some leading organizations, but just recently I started my own company. And we are developing FP&A boards and also a lot of different FP&A related subjects, workshops, webinars, and so on and so forth. Very quickly about the agenda. We will start with a very quick note on evolution of FP&A from traditional to digital. So I will update you on some of the quick definitions and what we see around the globe. Then we will have a case study from Guardian Industries on how driver-based planning has transformed FP&A at Guardian. And then Scott will share with us his view, his vision on the future of FP&A, predictive analytics, and machine learning. And then we will have our Q&A session. You will have opportunity to ask some of the questions. Before we start, I really would like to say thank you so much to our webinar sponsor, to OneStream Software Company. This is a provider of flex performance management solutions. And very quickly to update you on the latest from us in FP&A Trends Group. So we are currently in 16 countries, 27 cities. Just last week, we opened 2 new chapters in Houston and Washington, DC. Now about how you can get connected, how we can make this webinar really interactive. It will be 1-hour webinar. We will have 2 polling questions. We will have 1 Q&A session at the end. If you have any questions, you can ask during the session or at the end of the session using your chat box. Of course, it will be pending the time constraints. If it's happened that we don't have enough time to answer your questions, we will commit to answering you through email after the meeting. And after the meeting, you will have automatic survey where you will be able to evaluate what you learned today. So let me start very quickly with a quick introductory information. And just before I start, I would like to say that we have this fantastic discussion on driver-based and predictive FP&A in 4 boards in 4 cities of America in the last month. And in the middle of September, we also had exactly the same subject in London City as well, with our London FP&A board. So generally speaking, when we look at changing FP&A trends, the companies are moving from traditional budgeting and planning, such as last year plus, just looking at the last year as a measure for the future performance, to partially driver-based model, where at least revenue and variable expenses are driver-based. And companies are moving towards fully driver-based models as well. And then to predictive, prescriptive, and advanced analytics, and even machine learning, something that we started to call digital FP&A. So ideally, with the push of the button, you have your reforecast, replan, all done. So let me remind you about the definition of driver-based planning concept. This is here we are talking about fully driver-based planning model. You can see here that we have model which is a very mathematical, very defined. You have key business drivers, both external and internal. And then you have your output, which is return on asset and return on equity or profit before tax, and so on and so forth. Drivers, those are the operational costs with financial effect, matrices. And driver-based modeling, it's all about correlation. It's all about finding the relationship. Obviously, it's not as easy as it looks. Many people ask questions about the key external and internal drivers, how to find them. And this is exactly what we are going to do during this meeting. What we would like to do right now, we would like to have a very quick polling question and to have your feedback to understand where you are at the moment. I'm going to launch this. And the question is, how would you describe your current process? You can see this on your screen right now. How would you describe your current FP&A process? Please, can you select one of the following options? Is it traditional budgeting and planning, for example, last year plus percentage? Is it partially driver-based, where revenue and variable costs are really driver-based? Is it fully driver-based model? Or is it already digital? So the full or part of your P&L, it's the push of the button. You use predictive, prescriptive, and machine learning. So please, can you vote? We are going to close the questions. We are going to close the polling question right now and to share this on your screen. Just a moment, please. Those are the results for you. So we can see that 22% of you are traditional, 68% are partially driver-based. We are lucky to have those that are already on fully driver-based. So it would be wonderful to hear about your experience at one point. And we have 1% which is predictive, prescriptive, and machine learning. So at this point, I would like to ask Alex to comment. So Alex, what do you think about this quick polling question?
Yeah, I expected something similar to that. We personally in Guardian Guardian Glass just made the jump into a fully drive-based model. But yeah, we saw ourselves going through that same journey and looking forward into that predictive prescription coming up soon into connected to our model. So I expected the results to be something like that.
And to be honest, this is something what I see around the globe as well. So this is exactly what's happening around the globe. Thank you for your feedback. I'm hiding results right now. And I would like to introduce our first presentation, first case study. Alex Bird, who is Global Director of FP&A at Guardian Industries. And the subject is how driver-based planning has transformed financial planning and analysis at your company, Alex. Alex, you are welcome, and we are starting your presentation.
Thanks, Larissa, and hello, everyone, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about how we transform FP&A using driver-based planning. A little bit about my company, Guardian Industries. In Guardian, we have two main divisions, Guardian Glass being the biggest of the two, and SRG Global that makes automotive trim parts for the OEMs, automotive industry. We have 18,000 employees all around the world, 5 continents, 25 countries, very global company. Half our revenue comes from outside North America. We have world headquarters in Auburn Hills. Recently, in 2017, we're acquired by Koch Industries, so now we're part of the Koch Industries family of businesses. In glass, our main products are float, which is basically the raw, flat glass that you see in architectural everywhere, but we add value to that float by putting some coatings through our vacuum coating process, or laminating the glass, or tempering the glass, acid etch, mirror, and other surface treatments that we do to that glass to add value and features to the product that our customers value and want. Next slide, please. So in 2016, when I joined the Glass FP&A team, Global Glass FP&A team, basically I realized that we were challenged as far as our ability to plan and to report on the business results. And the challenges that I was facing was that basically when a plan was put together, we would have our financial statements for that, let's say, the 2018 annual operating plan. And then we had the different capabilities presenting to our CEOs all the initiatives that they were going to do for the same time period. And the CEO would look at finance and say, are all those initiatives in the plan? And many times the answer was, well, we're not sure. So there was not connection between those initiatives from the different capabilities or functional areas and what the numbers were showing, right? So that was one of the challenges. Also, we had different planning models in different regions, so there was not harmonized. We were not looking at the business the same way. There was regional models in many cases, but in almost all cases, really they were developed in Excel. So as the business grew or changed, we had to change those. So the whole model was not scalable for growth, and the fact because all this connection, we had a lot of problems when explaining the results. If we had variances, why did we have a variance, right? We had to go and ask the question to every single entity in order for them to look at their Excel model that was offline and then coming back with an answer or a commentary. There was no way for us to really understand the underlying assumptions on each one of those numbers. Next slide, please. So given the situation, we needed to transform. And I think all business transformation needs to start with the vision. So we define what I call the Corporate Performance Management Vision, CPM for short is the name of the industry, but basically that stands for Corporate Performance Management System. And our CPM vision was basically getting to an integrated global financial planning system that would allow us to plan future performance and track the variances to the underlying assumed KPIs. So basically, the key words are integrated, meaning that those assumed KPIs from the different functional areas had to be connected to the financials, had to be global, meaning we all had to be looking at the business the same way. And we were going to use it not just to plan future performance, but then also for tracking and the results and understanding why we are exceeding or meeting the expectations. Next slide, please. We quickly realized that in order to fulfill the vision, we needed a technological platform, right? We make, I don't want to get too much into the detail on how we got there, but in 2013, we implemented a technology that we used to consolidate the financial results. We also used it to consolidate our forecast, but just let's say the numbers, the P&L, not the underlying drivers, right? And we were using that platform, and when looking deeper into it, we realized that we could build using that same platform a very basic model to try to introduce just a few key drivers, mostly sales-driven drivers and variable cost drivers. And that's what we did in 2016. And in the second quarter of 2016, we launched our first, I would call it basic driver-based model that we use for the strategic plan. We had two basically plans in the company. One looks at the 5-year outlook, and another one that looks at the next annual operating plan calendar year. So we started using for the strategic plan, and then we also use it for the annual operating plan. This basic model, though, only was basically looking at what we were going to sell, and we were assuming that we were going to make everything that we were going to sell. So quickly realized as well that it's okay for maybe the strategic plan to assume that sales and production are the same. But once you get to the annual operating plan and you have to break down your results by month, you have things like seasonality, you have campaigns. So we knew that we had to expand that basic driver-based model and go to a more, I call it full driver-based or advanced, I call it advanced driver-based planning, where we not only look at what we're going to sell, but we also look at how we're going to sell it. So that gave us the opportunity to introduce a bunch of new drivers more related to operations. So our operations capability and functions were able to give us those KPIs that would drive that part of the financials. We also connected to the headcount. Headcount is a very important driver, right? So we have within the platform a tool called People Planning where we also can manage headcount and plan for headcount. And then all that was implemented in 17. What we did in 18 is, as we were getting good at this once a year AOP and a strategic plan using this tool, we got to a point where we say, you know what, for our monthly forecast, because we need to kind of like tell management what we think the month is going to end up around mid-month, and we do a couple of monthly forecasts to see how we're doing. We ended up really tweaking those models just to get those monthly forecasts. So it's become so agile that with just a couple of tweaks and a push of a button, we get all those monthly forecasts consolidated at the global level. So that's come pretty handy. And then what we are working on and improving now is now that we have a really good foundation with the model, getting better at the dashboards in order to visually track how we're doing on performance, not just at the numbers, but at the underlying KPIs, as we're going to see in a minute. Next slide, please. So basically, what's this advanced driver-based planning model about? Well, as I said, we're not just looking at what we sell, but how we make it. So basically, we have our products rolled up into certain forecast categories and type of products from the point of view of manufacturing, and then we basically link those products with the assets that they use and how they use it, right? Some throughput drivers like cycle time, yield, that would then allow us to see how much of what we think we can sell, we can make with the assets that we have. So we're going through a process of balancing the demand with the supply, either through inventory or adding assets. If we're thinking more about the strategic plan, where we're going to be adding a new plant or a new facility or a new line in a plant, well, all that production comes in line and help us balance supply and demand. And then we have the ability to also with this model to on other things that are more like fixed cost, that we can make a high level assumption for a specific fixed cost that we know that is not going to change, and the system really is going to allocate it down to the lower entities based on history. So the whole model is agile. We can plan at a higher level when we want, but with the system is going to drive that detail down to the very detailed level, so then we can aggregate it or report it at any level of detail that we need to. We also basically all this is used. The same model is used at the regional level, at the plant level, at the global level. So we are looking at the business the same way, and because of this, we're now able to walk between actual or plan. You can put two different scenarios side by side at any time period and generate a dynamic walk of what the variances are. And that would be the next slide, Larissa. And this is basically what we're building now with the dashboards. Is basically you tell the system interactively what are the two posts that you want to compare, beginning, ending, and then all the different categories of variances show up for you. And in each one of them, once you click, it would expose the underlying drivers that are causing that variance. For example, if we start with sales, the first breakdown of the sales impact on our EBITDA is going to be volume, price, mix. But then if you go into volume, you're going to see it by product category or by region, whatever you choose. If you go to variable cost, you can see how much was because of spending and how much was because of price or how much was the FX impact. So it's all broken down based on the underlying driver. Next slide, please. If I had to say what are the key success criteria for this project was, first of all, the global involvement of our business partners. So when we were defining these drivers, we had a proposal. We started with the best model that we had in the company, but we went through all the global capability leaders and making sure that we were looking at the things that really mattered to them, right? And connecting and educating them on how the things that were important for them were impacting the financials. And it was a good learning process, because maybe they were focusing too much attention on things that were not that important, and the other way around. Maybe we were missing some things in our model that we had to capture. That was a very good exercise in order to get ownership through the company. The other thing is that it had to be user-friendly. So whatever tool or whatever thing we build, we wanted to build it and own it, because basically the business changes and we want to be able to make those changes. So we own those models and we are able to change them without having to go to consultants. It's a technology that is able to process large amounts of data, so we can connect a lot of data into the model and summarize it very quickly, so that processing power is important. Workflow was also very important, is the ability to guide the users onto how to load the information. So we can design, we've designed the workflow so users don't get lost and they know what they need to do, what they need to fill in at any given point in time. And the last thing is agility. As I said before, that we're in a very changing environment. So if we need to change values, you can, and automatically you see the results really quickly. So we can build scenarios very quickly. And if we had to make a tweak in the model, we can do it, and all that will basically automatically apply to all the plans that we have. Next, please. Benefits to our business. Well, as I said before, now we are basically looking at globally the business the same way. We've eliminated hundreds of Excel spreadsheets, a ton of work into collecting information that now we can focus on, or now we can spend into analyzing information and validating the information that we got. Through going through identifying the drivers, we make sure that we focus on the things that matter the most. So we prioritize our limited resources into those things that can make an impact. The bets are integrated with the financial results. So we cannot say that we're going to sell more if we don't have the assets in order to make that more. And if we have more available time in a machine, but we don't have a market to sell that product, that machine, that doesn't necessarily translate into more revenue, right? So that integration is very important. And then the tracking, since everything, all the bets are integrated, when we have a variance, we can now see what is the underlying driver that is basically creating the variance. The last thing I'd say is that we can quickly generate simulations, and that's very important in a changing environment. Right now, we're working on recession, what if recession for 2020. So we can use these models in order to do that and say, okay, we don't know when the recession is going to hit, but by the time it hits, we are ready with a playbook on how to react quickly. And last slide, please. So what's next? We have a good foundation, I believe. So now the focus now is on to making the most out of it, and that's going to come from improving our dashboards, making them decision ready and interactive, so our business users can go in and get the information they need when they need it, and looking at better forward insight, and that's looking forward to listen to what Scott has to say, because we're not very good yet at connecting our more kind of like our direct internal drivers with external drivers, and using machine learning and predictive analytics in order to get better accuracy on what we believe is coming in terms of demand, price, and things like that. So looking forward to learn in that arena and try to connect those predictive analytics to our existing models to make them even better. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your presentation. Definitely, this is the demonstration how driver-based planning could be really very powerful and how it can transform the whole FP&A process in the company. But now this is the timing for us to look at the next step after fully driver-based planning. So we have Scott Stern here, who is Global Director of Finance Solutions at OneStream Software. And Scott will show us his vision and his thought leadership on the future of FP&A predictive analytics and machine learning. And before we start, I would like to say that I see more and more cases of using machine learning for forecasting in the company. So at each 27 chapters of FP&A board, the number of people that experiment or even using this, it's already started. Scott, I would like to give the microphone to you. You're welcome. Your presentation is starting right now.
That's great. Thanks, Larissa. Thank you very much, Alex. On behalf of the OneStream team around the world, for those of you on the line, we really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. On a personal level, FP&A is near and dear to my heart. I've spent the first part of my career in this space, and so thanks for everything you guys are doing every day. As Larissa said, finance groups are really coming a long way if you look at kind of the previous generation in terms of backward looking, focus on closing the books and kind of where we're going in terms of modern finance. Just think about the topic today. We're talking about machine learning, predictive analytics. We use vernacular around strategic business partnership. And while we've absolutely come a long way, I think it's also fair to say that the way we got here is going to be different from the path that we're going to take going forward, right? Think about the legacy tools we've used in the past. They're very process-oriented, very fragmented in terms of how we close the books, how we plan. But in this next phase, as Larissa and as Alex are talking about, I think we're going to be leveraging technology. I know we're going to be leveraging technology in new ways that are really going to help us bring insight into these drivers and this driver-based planning processes. So one important point I wanted to make clear, right? We think about drivers. these are elements that actually help us make decisions, right? We want to be able to impact and take action within our organizations, and that's what drivers help us do, right? To bake operational decisions and then understand what they mean from a financial perspective. And as we think about moving forward with new technologies like predictive analytics and ML and others, now the question becomes, well, what insights about these drivers do we have that allow us to have some strategic dialogue about our future performance? So incredibly important topic today, and again, we appreciate the opportunity. Next slide. At the same time, while many of us talk about the promise of predictive analytics and machine learning, and I think the first polling question made this very clear, it's also interesting to look at what data is actually saying about the importance finance puts on this today. So here's a quick chart that we have that illustrates how organizations are viewing the importance of data science and machine learning. And what you see here is kind of an interesting trend. It's like over 50% of organizations see data science and ML as critical or very important. But at the same time, finance still tends to lag these other functions, right? In fact, if you look at this data, only 20%, less than 20% of teams, finance teams, see predictive analytics and ML as critical, right? Pretty important and interesting point given how much we're all hearing about this today. Next slide. So in my last 3 years, I've had the opportunity, fortunately, to meet folks all over the globe, just like you guys. And I've kind of come down to a really simple point, and that is that although we hear a lot about this, and although we hear a lot about these use cases, it's not yet crystal clear what these advanced analytics are actually going to mean for finance folks on a day in and day out basis. What does it mean for our roles? What does it mean for our teams, right? How do these technologies fit within our core processes, right? How do we rationalize this to make this part of what we do? So there's this big question on usability and ease of use. And if you look at this chart here, you'll see that the data validates this as well. And so while there's no question of the potential across these use cases, one of the things I wanted to stress today, particularly for FP&A folks, is I think it's really important to take a step back and ask a very simple question. What are we trying to achieve with this, right? Of course, there's an element of financial accuracy, of operational accuracy, of getting our drivers accurate. And I think for me, and I think you see this with the Guardian story, advanced analytics also offer a way to change the dialogue with our business partners, right? To ask and find another way to ask why, to remove bias. And as all of you know, if you're an FP&A leader, you may never get credit for this. I always say that, but driving meaningful dialogue with your business partners and building that trust through validation of data and showing that you have this understanding of the business, that's a massive part of our roles. Next slide. So what's holding us back? I want to point out every organization is different. We all have different levels of learning in terms of what these advanced technologies are. But there's a few areas that we wanted to cover today. First, I think industry buzz about the future of finance is causing a lot of confusion, right? You go on TV, you hear advertisements. We're throwing around these terms like predictive analytics, machine learning, and AI. And we may not necessarily understand the differences between them. Or worse, some organizations and some folks may think that they're the same thing. Well, they're not. Another thing that's adding to this confusion, I believe, is software vendors. Folks who are out there promoting this quote unquote push button mentality, right? That they can produce for you a model for every single aspect of your business with a push of a button. Well, when it comes to ML, and we're going to talk about that, it's just not true. In fact, when you get into thinking about machine learning at a sophisticated global organization, right? Various geographies, various products, various product categories, various regions within where those product categories sit, it's actually really complex, and we're going to talk more about that today. And third, between all the industry buzz and push-button mentality, I think many of us are creating expectations that may just not be realistic. For example, if we think that we're going to be grabbing models that are 99.9% accurate with a push of a button, or that predictive analytics or ML are going to replace all of our roles in FP&A, like that adds some anxiety to things, but it also creates false expectations. Our CEO at OneStream, Tom Shea, he's got a great quote about this. I'm going to steal it shamelessly. He says that predictive analytics and ML, it's not going to be like Skynet from what you see from the Terminator movies, for those of you who know that, right? There's not this computer that's going to be around in the next few years that's just controlling everything we do. For ML, for machine learning to take hold, for it to have high value, what's really important is us. It's our human intuition. And so it takes the ability to take incremental steps to build that trust, leveraging these processes, right? It's about the convergence of people and technology and how we work together and work side by side. Very important. Next slide. And so we want to start off this discussion by really dispelling a few of these myths around advanced analytics. The first, I want us all to walk away today with this being crystal clear. Machine learning and predictive analytics are not the same thing. And though predictive analytics and ML can help and solve some of the same business challenges, like looking at a monthly forecast, for example, traditional predictive analytics will just not give the same level of business insight that ML can, okay? The second, and this is important too, if you're out there doing your diligence, and you all are, you're finance leaders, if there's a vendor out there that's telling you that they can do machine learning across your business, through your hierarchy, with a click, be really skeptical. Because as we're going to talk about, there's not really a one-size-fits-all for this. This is about adding human intuition into this. It requires continuous investment, both in your personnel, in those business partnerships, in infrastructure to capture this and grab continuous value, right? We have to take human intuition, turn that into data, grab that data, bring that into very advanced modeling. Those models need to be trained. They need to learn. Very important. They're not the same thing. No such thing as a one push button click. Next slide. So here we just want to point out a few of the differences. So these next 2 pages will be focused on some key differentiators between predictive and ML. In general, though it's possible, most predictive models are not going to grab external data. It's possible, but most are not going to do this. Why is that? Because there's a time and a cost for all of you as leaders to understand which variables are important to you, right? In fact, a lot of these external variables, things like oil prices as an example, interest rates, Bureau of Labor information, GDP, this is actually free. You can get this for free. So the question is, which of those are meaningful to you? And then once you find these variables, you'll need a way to clean the data, to stage the data, to bring them into your model, to keep your models fresh. So the bigger and more important point here, on predictive is that these models are static, okay? And by static, what it means is that the variables used in these models do not change. So you're essentially relying on past performance and history to produce a future result. So in many ways, predictive analytics, it's very advanced math. A lot of us have learned about this in our statistics class, and clearly software is helping rationalize that and bring that forward through automation. And I don't want to discount this. At the same time, predictive models can be a very powerful way and cost-effective way to do what? What did we talk about earlier? To drive dialogue, to do this at a generalized trend level within your business and drive that conversation with your business partners. The higher level within your hierarchy you're looking at for those models, the better they're going to perform. And we're going to talk about this in the next section. But taking a step back and back to that core question we asked originally, at any level, if you think about what FP&A is trying to achieve, there's nothing bad about having a statistically significant and unbiased forecast scenario to compare to. There's nothing bad that can come out of that as a business partner. And so those are a lot of the ways that within FP&A, we're going to be leveraging predictive analytics. Next slide.
This is the timing for the next polling question. We would like some feedback from you. Where are you at the moment in terms of predictive, prescriptive, and machine learning analytics? So I'm going to launch it right now. It will be on your screen, and if you can vote quickly. Are you planning to start implementing predictive analytics and or machine learning for FP&A within the next 2 years? And the options are no, we don't have those plans. We already use both predictive analytics and machine learning. Yes, we are planning to start to implement. Please, can you vote right now? We have a few seconds to finish it. I'm going to close the poll right now, and I'm going to share the results with you. The results are sharing. Just a moment, please. I'm going to read those results because for technical reasons, it's not sharing. So 52% say no, we don't have those plans. So more than half of this. 5% say we already use both predictive analytics and machine learning. And 43% they said, yes, we are planning to start the implementation. Scott, how would you like to comment on those? Is it surprising for you?
No, it's not surprising. I do think a lot of organizations have plans to do this. The biggest question is how to bring this into our processes day to day. That's a really important point. And then where do we start? I have another page here that to talk into more granularity around ML. But in general, the question is, do we want to start by leveraging some predictive analytics and technology to help us guide these conversations with our business partners? Or do we make a broader investment into data science organizations that can work side by side with our finance teams to kind of really build out much more complex and insightful models?
And I would like to add that those results of this poll are really very much in line with what we see around the globe with International FP&A Board. Yes, around 5% already started to do this, and I see how this percentage increasing definitely from month to month. 43% definitely going to start planning, and we see that this figure around 40 to 50%. But some companies they still don't have these plans, and it's okay as well. I think this is a great idea now to share final thoughts. So Scott, if you can do this, please.
Yeah. So these are really technical topics and really important for FP&A leaders. And so it's easy when you think about these in a vacuum to be discouraged, right? So I think it's really important to have a strategic vision in mind, but be comfortable starting small. And by starting small and focusing in on the business drivers, as Alex and the team has done very well, how do you drive action? How do you focus on where you can create that dialogue? That's incredibly important, right? So if you start small, build trust, that trust can permeate throughout your organization. Predictive analytics, as we talked about, and machine learning are not the same thing. This is not about 100% accuracy or replacing jobs. It's about finding a new way to ask why. And when you do that, be consistent. My old CFO used to tell me, beat the drum. That's really important as you think about building trust. It's about leveraging human intuition to drive that performance alongside your technology. And to point out, you guys know this, big companies out there with heavy cost of goods and large inventories, every 1% of your forecast accuracy matters, right? So through this consistency and through beating the drum, you have an opportunity over time to really impact the business. So just a couple final thoughts for you all today. So thank you so much for giving us the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Scott, for sharing your insights with us. Of course, we are a little bit disappointed that it's not push of the button. This is exactly what we need in FP&A right now. Everything automated, push of the button, reforecast, replan. But we understand the reason for this. This is a great timing now to have Q&A session. And people already started to text their questions. We already have quite a few here. So this is your good time, and please use your chat box for sending your questions. Please specify to whom is your question. Obviously, there are a lot of them. We will try to answer as many as we can. If not, they will be answered after the meeting, maybe through email or LinkedIn. So the first question that I see right now, this is the question to Alex. Alex, can you describe the processes, how you went to find, what is your process to find the key business drivers, both internal and external, for your driver-based planning process?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we started with initial proposal based on our best model that we had. In fact, it was in Europe, not in North America. And using that as a starting point is when we brought in each one of the global capability leaders for each of the business functions, you know, sales, operations, supply chain, procurement, and so on, to make sure that we were capturing all the key drivers within their area of responsibility. Then we had the discussion of how those would affect the financials, and it was a back and forth process until we got everybody buys into the model was approved and implemented. The good thing about this is that no one argues now the results of the variances and what's driving it, right? So we can get to work into improving instead of questioning the results.
Thank you for your answer, Alex. We have another one for you, and this is about the culture in the company. So, how did your operational and FP&A teams react to introduction of driver-based planning? This is such a huge change to the culture, to the way how people do business. So please, can you answer this?
Yeah, the driver-based, to be honest, in my team, we had a very analytical mindset. So for us, it was very exciting because we were basically finally connecting the dots. So, but using data, it was not about an opinion. It was, hey, this is how this driver impacts the financials, and this is why. So I believe everyone in the team feels now a lot more connected to the business, and I think that they're all very excited on what we've created. We see the business partners coming to us more than before, so that also plays a good role in making you feel good about what you've done. So I'd say that the impact was very good.
The next question is about the solution that you used for driver-based planning. So the question is, what system did you use? And also the question is about the people planning that was introduced in Q3 2017. Is it a custom-built solution, and is it truly by headcount employee level of planning, or is it something different? So please, can you answer the questions?
Yes. So the solution that we had for our financial consolidation was OneStream, and it was the same solution that it was used just to consolidate the P&Ls for forecasting, but without any driver. So the first question in 2016 when I came in is like, the perception that we had in the company, many places in the company, was that this platform was only good for financial consolidation. But as we dig deeper, we realized that no, that this platform, this OneStream platform, was very well designed to support driver-based planning. And we compared to other applications that there were in the marketplace, and we went through a selection process, and we realized that yeah, OneStream was one of the best in driver-based to support driver-based planning. So since we were already using it for financial consolidation, there was a lot of advantages of leveraging that platform, because all the metadata was already there. We could leverage that. We could leverage the security. We could leverage the cost of the licenses because we don't have to pay extra for using the same platform more, in other areas. So that it became a no-brainer that was the solution that we had to use. And the implementation team and the consultants that we used were very helpful. So that was a success story, and I would recommend it. People planning is one of those modules that OneStream offers, like an already developed module. You don't have to program it yourself. It's like a plug-and-play solution that you can download, almost like you download an app on an iPhone. And it has all the necessary fields that you need to plan your workforce. And it can be planned at any level you want. You could have a record that is, operators in the line, and you put a number, or you could go down to the employee name level and connect it with your HR systems in order to keep loading it. It's up to you at the level of detail that you want to plan your people.
Thank you so much for your answer, Alex. Now we have a question to Scott. Scott, there is a question about what would be your recommendation to those who already started the journey. So how they should approach it? What should be the logical steps in approaching the journey to predictive, prescriptive, driver-based, and also machine learning FP&A? Thank you.
Sure, that's a great question. I think, as we said earlier, take a step back and try to work backwards from what you're trying to do. Are you trying to leverage the forecast for a baseline forecast, right? Like a scenario? Are you trying to create a dialogue with your executive team? Are you trying to leverage this as an unbiased forecast with your demand planning team, as an example, if that's something you're doing? And so if you think about it in that framework, that'll give you a way to prioritize how to get started. And then you're able to say, okay, well, where can I make the best impact? If you're looking to give a baseline for an executive team, say you're doing strategic planning or you're beginning an AOP as an example, well, understanding where your key markets are going at a high level and what may be happening absent any of the changes in your business, that's a great case for predictive analytics, right? Particularly using external data. And you have that discussion, and it helps you set targets, and it helps you kind of organize the kind of conversations and the initiatives that you may need to have. But then again, if you're looking for a forecast that's going to give you daily, weekly, monthly type of high accuracy, right, with really good MAPEs, accuracy measures, then machine learning is going to give you a much broader and more robust depth of data, because it gives you more ability to bring this human intuition about those key markets, about those products, about those categories into your forecast process, right? But there's also a higher cost of doing that. And so that's the way I would answer that question, is kind of think about what you're trying to achieve and then what actions you want to take, and that'll help you organize what type of technology may be best for you.
Thank you so much, Scott. I can see that we have a lot of questions, and definitely we are not going to answer all of them during the next 5 minutes that we have left. But we promise you that we will get back to you if you identified your name, but also we would be open to your emails and LinkedIn connections. So we will try to answer every question that we have. But now we will have the last question to Alex. Very interesting question about how you're balancing your short-term market changes with long-term strategy. How do you do this through KPIs and drivers? Do you adjust long-term planning concurrently, or how do you do this, Alex?
Yeah, we are right now using the same model and the same drivers for both long-term and short-term. Short-term is looking at the next calendar year, whereas long-term is looking at 5-year. And we don't have them necessarily connected, but what we do is when we get to the 5-year forecasting cycle, obviously we populate that first year with information that we already have, but we don't reforecast the whole 5 years every time we take a look at the next year. The two exercises I have to say that have different focus. The strategic plan focus more on our growth bets and where we see the market going and how we can adapt the assets to that growth, whereas the operating plan is more focused on execution, specifically to the coming year with a more defined set of assets and demand that we expect. So two different purposes, two different levels of detail as well. But the good thing is that we use the same structure, model, and drivers.
Thank you so much, Alex. It was the last question that we could answer during our webinar session. But as I said, there are a lot of them, and I'm going to share them with the speakers, and we'll try to connect with you as soon as we can. Now this is the timing for us to close the webinar, but I would like to remind you that the meeting was about predictive and driver-based FP&A. We looked at the power of driver-based planning. We looked at the difference between predictive analytics and driver-based planning. And also we talk about machine learning and how it's going to restructure, how it's going to change FP&A world. The next step, when we close the webinar, you will be able to share your feedback with us. You will be able to ask the questions. You will be able to connect with all of us. So please feel free to do this. The survey will be just after we close the webinar. And finally, I would like to say thank you so much to our fantastic speakers today. Alex, thank you so much for sharing your case study with us. And Scott, thank you so much for sharing your vision and your thought leadership on the subject. Also, I would like to say thank you so much to OneStream Software for supporting us with this webinar. And until the next time, we are planning another webinar for this year. It will be in 1 month's time. You will receive the information. But now this is the time to say thank you so much to all this international group of people who joined us, our meeting today. I would like to say a special thank you to our global FP&A board members and to our global FP&A community. Thank you so much for your passion, collaboration. Let us stay in touch. Until next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.